Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to learn how to use moldable plastic pellets to make some cool stuff. Alright, so these are the moldable plastic pellets that I will be using in this video. These are literally just the Hobby Lobby kind of cosplay brand, just from Hobby Lobby. Now these cost $5.99 USD. Since it is Hobby Lobby, they like to change their prices on items, so sometimes you'll probably find this as low as like maybe $4.99 to like $7. They like to change the price a lot there, which is another reason we don't like Hobby Lobby. Unfortunately, that is where I get most of my supplies. Anyway, so these, when you open it up, are literally just tiny, like, granular beads of plastic. They're literally just tiny little, they're not like perfectly circular, but they're like little beads of plastic. And when you heat them up in water, they kind of melt and merge together to create kind of a plastic slime. It creates kind of a putty that you can mold into literally any shape you want. And then it hardens and becomes this firm, solid plastic, which makes it really good for a lot of things. I personally use them for noses and teeth on my masks. I'll show you some examples of that in a second, but these are what we are using. All right, so the directions are on top and they do tell you to boil the water. Now, I am going to be very honest and say that I do not boil these. I literally make them in the microwave, and this is a tutorial for how to make it in the microwave. But this is a do at your own risk because heating up water in the microwave, especially moldable plastic like this, can be dangerous. If you are not an adult, please have an adult around just to supervise, just in case, because hot water can burn you and it is not fun. It's probably about as dangerous as using boiling water, but be careful when using these. All right, so here I am over at the microwave. This is literally just the one I use at my dorm at college, but you're gonna need some supplies. So the important thing is to get a glass bowl. It has to be glass, not plastic. The plastic pellets will melt and stick to a plastic bowl, and it will ruin your bowl and you won't really be able to use the pellets. So a glass bowl. This one is filled with water. You don't really want to fill it all the way to the top, just enough so that the plastic can get hot and melt. You're also going to want a glass plate. This is to put the plastic on after you pull it out of the water. And lastly, something to pull it out of the water with. This is literally the end of an X-Acto knife. It's a solid metal kind of rod. I use this end where there's no holes or anything, and the plastic doesn't stick very well to this. Be careful when using like utensils from the kitchen that are metal, because it will stick to them and it will ruin them. So use something you're not really afraid to get ruined. Okay, so you're gonna want to open this up and start pouring the plastic pellets into the water. Yeah, like that. I never really measure how much plastic I'm using, but as you can see, some of them kind of float to the top, some of them sink to the bottom. They will melt together and create a kind of goo. So there's that. So next step is to put it inside the microwave. So let me just open this up here and set it inside. Okay. Now, this will depend on what microwave you're using. I set mine for 2 minutes. This is a very like low wattage microwave because it's cheap and for college. So if you set it for 2 minutes on like a better microwave, it might get too hot. So take great care not to burn yourself. Be very, very careful when using this. So I put it in for 2 minutes and there it goes. Now keep in mind, I am not a professional. This is not professional advice. This is not like the way you're supposed to use this. This is just how I do it. So please, please, please be careful when doing this. And my advice may lead to injury or otherwise if you are not careful. Disclaimer, disclaimer, this is a disclaimer. Anyway, we've got like a minute left, so be careful. Okay, it is now done, so I'm gonna open the microwave, and if you look inside, the plastic pellets are all kind of melted. So this is extremely hot. So what you're gonna wanna do is use like an oven mitt or something to get this out. I don't have any of those, so I'm just gonna use my fingers. So lift it to the top of the microwave, and there we go. Okay. This next step is to get this piece of metal and dip it in and slowly gather all the plastic together, like so. And then transfer it to the plate. And actually, for some reason, this didn't get as hot as it usually does. So see, as you can see, I'm kind of touching it right out of it. That's not recommended. Don't do that, unless you know for sure that's not hot. But once it cools down enough to touch, make sure you get it on this plate, and it is ready to go. As you can see, it's kind of like a putty. Now, as I'm touching this right out of the microwave, be very knowledgeable that this is really, really hot water. I do not want to touch this. This is still very hot. But once you get all the water off of it, it tends to cool down fairly quickly to be able to mold. Like this. So now we are back over at my crafting station, and here is the moldable plastic. So this takes about I don't know how many minutes you have to work with it, not very many, but what I do is kind of mold it into a nose shape. Usually I do this when I have a mask ready, so I'm just gonna split it up, but it gets solid pretty fast. So the thinner it is, the faster it'll get solid. So this thin plastic layer that I'm getting here will solidify very, very quickly. You'll kind of see it start frosting up as it dries. So what I'm gonna make here is just a regular kind of tooth shape. So we're gonna kind of turn this into a fang here. There we go, sorry if that's on the camera. But as you can see, right now it's clear. That is not the case when it dries. It dries solid white. There we go. Kind of a claw shape. There. Now, if you set that down on this plastic, it'll probably stick to it. So you really don't want to do that. Or at least you set it down and then rotate it. But if you set something down to dry like this, chances are it'll dry with a flat portion on the back, because it technically moves and melts kind of like a liquid does. So as it starts to solidify, it will move slightly out of shape. So when you're making a nose, for example, and you put it on the mask, and it'll slowly drip downwards and kind of deform over time. So you're gonna really want to watch this as you're making the shape you want, and adjust it as it dries. Now, as for this leftover section, you don't want to leave it in a thick clump like this, because you can actually reheat this again and get more moldable plastic. So I like to put it into a disc like this, nice and thin and flat, and then once it dries, you can put it back in that water, microwave it again, and it'll melt back into usable plastic way easier than if it was a thicker shape. Because if it's a thicker shape, it's better to boil it, but I usually leave it in a flat circle like this and set it to the side. But as you can see on the edges here, it's starting to get a little bit more solid color. It'll start to get a little bit like frosted glass, and eventually it'll dry completely white. It's very fun to work with, and even now you can see that's kind of starting to solidify. When you mix it together, the crumpled edges don't exactly disappear, they stay, because it's starting to get tougher and thicker and less moldable as time moves on. So if you want to create a shape that's smooth, you're gonna have to roll it like that, but you can still see the ridges. So if you want something really, really smooth, you're gonna wanna sculpt it soon after it's out of the microwave. All right, I'm just waiting for this to kind of fog up a bit, create a claw shape. There we go. So I'm gonna set this like that and see if it'll dry. It's a little foggy now, it's less clear, and that's because it's starting to solidify. So I will keep you guys updated when this solidifies. I'll be right back. As for this plastic over here that I've flattened down, as you can see, it's mostly clear. It's a lot clearer than this one is. That's because this was a lot hotter because it was in a larger ball. But see, these edges are starting to get a lot harder. It kind of solidifies like a frozen lake would, like the edges get harder first, and then it solidifies all the way through. But this will eventually be a solid plastic disc that will be ready to melt back down to use later. So it's kind of neat seeing the edges kind of turn a little foggy. You can almost see it in real time as it dries. The edges will kind of move through. It's really neat to watch, actually, but see, this one in comparison is almost completely solid. The more you work with it, it tends to solidify a bit faster. This I just let sit, so it had time to just cool off on its own. So it's still a little bit see-through, but good to compare them. All right. Okay, it has now been about 10 minutes since I initially pulled the plastic out of the microwave, and this is completely solid. As you can see, it is completely white and no longer see-through, and is very much solid. As for the plastic sheet, it's a little bit bendy in the middle, but otherwise firm along the edges. So it takes about 10 minutes for it to fully solidify from the point of taking it out of the water. So you really don't have much time to work with it, but for small pieces like teeth or horns, it works very, very well. Like I said, I use these like almost exclusively for noses and teeth, but as you can see in this fox mask that was drying, I made the nose completely out of this. Now, when you are going to paint this, the paint really won't stick to it because it's a very smooth surface. So you're going to want sandpaper to sand it. It's sandable, says right in the package. Whoops. But sand it, make sure it's nice and roughed up, and then paint it. You're going to want to do a couple coats just to make sure it really stays. And then what I do, because I don't really sand my plastic, because I don't have sandpaper, I paint a bunch of layers onto the nose, and then I seal over it. So the paint will stay and no longer chip, and it'll actually stick to it because I sealed over it. So if you don't want to sand it, just make sure you get a good sealer to spray over it. That way the paint doesn't chip off of it. I'm still gonna do another coat on these teeth, but if you look over at this guy, his teeth are not painted, I just leave them the Moldable plastic texture, but this nose is painted and it is solid. So yes, that is what I use the moldable plastic for. Moldable plastic is a very fun and very useful material to have, and for the price point, I think it's well worth it. I love using this material, and I think it creates some really good results, especially for noses in my case. I think next time, if I'm going to redo the jewelry on this mask, I will use moldable plastic and some silver paint. So it's useful for not only noses, teeth, horns, claws, but also jewelry and fine details on your masks. If you liked this video or found it helpful, make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. I have plenty more videos of tips and tricks, and will be uploading more regularly. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.